Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. We're just going to give everyone a minute to join, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining today's webinar. My name is Lauren Izoni, and I help coordinate the trainings here at CC Pace. Just a little bit about CC Pace. We're a 40-year-old business and IT consulting company specializing in healthcare and financial services industries. We offer a full suite of business consulting capabilities, digital services, and an array of offerings under the Agile transformation umbrella, including certified public courses and customizable private trainings, and of course, webinars. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please submit them in the question box on the right of your screen, and we'll answer as many as possible at the conclusion of the webinar. With that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to the instructor for today, Anup.
Hey, everyone. Lauren, can you hear me okay?
Yep, can hear you great.
All right, great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar. The topic for today's webinar is, are your product owners truly empowered? Little bit about me. Let me get this. I am experiencing some PowerPoint technical difficulty. Give me just 1 second. All right. Little bit about me. I have been practicing Agile for almost 13 years. Started out as a business analyst, moved on into Scrum Master role, and then found my passion for Agile and got into Agile coaching. I worked in public and private sector and have experienced Agile from different angles and different contexts. So over time, I found my passion lying in identifying and connecting the dots that won't be quite obvious or apparent when it comes to Agile transformation, success of Agile, and how various factors in the organization can affect the Agile implementation. Towards that, this webinar is basically just touching on one aspect or one area of the success of Agile and a role, product owner. So before we begin and jump into the topic, I just wanted to kind of level set the expectations of what we are going to talk about. When you look at the title of the webinar, are your product owners truly empowered? The first thought that comes to mind is, are the product owners getting enough autonomy and ability to make decisions, right? And while that's an important factor, that won't be the only factor that we'll be looking in. And even if in your context, your product owners have sufficient autonomy, are there other areas, other factors that are affecting their success? We'll be doing kind of taking a broad look at the environment that product owners operate in. So having said that, let's jump right into the topic. So here's the quick definition of a product owner role. Scrum Guide states that a product owner is responsible for maximizing the value of product and the work of the development team. So focus being on maximizing the value. So a product owner represents the business and represents the needs of the business community to the Agile team, and is responsible for establishing and communicating the vision and subsequently how to implement that vision to the team. Here is a quick high-level look at the product owner role and the various stakeholders that a product owner interacts with. So you have the business community, which includes the end users and the stakeholders, sometimes the buyers. There's also the team that the product owner collaborates with, and all of these stakeholders have different expectations from the product owner role. So, for example, if you see the leadership that the product owner interacts with, whether it is IT leadership or the leadership of their own organization, their expectations are that the product owner should communicate progress and set the right expectations with upper management, and ensure that the product adoption is optimal and there is an optimal return on investment, and also decide when to release value to the customer and provide that valuable input in the decision-making process. On the other hand, expectations from the team side is that the product owner is able to effectively articulate the overall vision and priorities, and they're also able to understand the need of the end user and clearly convey them to the team in the form of features and stories, prioritize the work, and make trade-offs between features, business needs, and also the technical needs of the platform or the system. And also, the obvious one, approve or accept the completed work, basically accepting the stories and providing sign-offs. Customer expectations, people who are actually using the system, they have a slightly different set of expectations that they understand. The product owner should understand the customer's pain points, users' pain points, and meet those needs in the shortest time possible. So I articulated basically a set of expectations, and sometimes those expectations kind of collide with each other. So that was my intent around articulating all these expectations that we have from the product owner role. Here are some of the characteristics in the personality that we want a product owner to have. Product owner should be a visionary and a doer. They should be able to lead, but also they should be able to collaborate effectively with the team and other stakeholders. They should be an expert in their domain, and they should have the ability to make decisions and judgment calls, fair judgment calls. So having said that, there are some challenges that we see with the product owner role, and this is basically leadership or business leadership or customers or even team facing this challenge. As a stakeholder, some of the challenges that stakeholders face with the product owner role is that my IT needs are not being met in time. A team member might say that our product owner pushes us beyond capacity and doesn't really understand the pain that we go through. And then leadership might say that our product owner is not getting the best out of their team, right? They're not running the team effectively or managing the team effectively. Of course, these are some of these anti-patterns, but these are some of the challenges that you would commonly hear in organizations. So what's going on? What is causing, when we know these are the expectations, we make the right hiring decisions or recruitment decisions, what is causing all these challenges? And what can we do about them? So let's take a little bit of a deeper look at it from this particular point of view. So there is three primary factors that think that affect the product owner's success. And the three are knowledge, empathy, and psychological safety. We're going to do a deep dive in each one of these. And I know that there's other factors, but with some analysis, we realize that some of those could be derivative of these primary factors, could be a result of a combination of these. So let's do a deep dive. Let's begin with the knowledge factor. All right, so in knowledge, there are three areas or three dimensions, so to speak. PO's domain knowledge, product owner's process knowledge, and then the third is an organizational awareness of the product owner role. We'll talk about each one of these and see how they impact the product owner success. Some of these factors are quite obvious, right? And I wanted to talk about them, touch on them briefly, just to make sure that we're not leaving them out. And then there will be some that you will see are not as actively discussed or analyzed when it comes to assessing the effectiveness of a product owner, right? So product owner's domain knowledge. This is the most obvious and most commonly assessed factor. A product owner should understand the business domain and must have a sufficient understanding of the business so that they're able to effectively interact with the business stakeholders and they're able to effectively communicate the business need to the team. But they should also be able to make the right judgment calls and drive the direction of the product. That's not to say that product owner should be a know-it-all and know the business inside out. While that's a great thing to have, it's sometimes not practical to have that consistently across the organization. But they should have enough understanding of the business or the product so that they can effectively communicate with the subject matter experts and then translate that business need effectively to the team. So that is the product owner's domain knowledge. Let's talk about product owner's process knowledge. And this, factor primarily references the product owner's understanding of how Agile works, right? It is important for the product owner to know what it takes to deliver in an Agile context when the team is supposed to work in a dynamic environment with minimal set of requirements, and comparing this to like a traditional world of having extensive set of requirements that are effectively locked and team is supposed to implement those. That is the traditional world. Compare that to the Agile world where business need and stories are getting refined on an ongoing basis and becoming available for the team to work on a very shorter sort of runway for them to prepare and implement that. So in this context, a product owner must know what it takes to work with an Agile team. Agile development requires working in a lean and minimal approach with a focus on value. So it's necessary to understand when a team is facing a challenge in terms of implementing a business need, what is it that the product owner must do in order to support the team. If they are not able to understand, then it will be difficult for the team to see the product owner as a team member, and they'll see a product owner as an entity that has to be handled or managed and then work accordingly, which creates a sort of a disconnect between product owner and team. Now in this area, I should mention, just having a 2 days Agile training or a CSPO certification is not enough. A product owner should really understand what it means to be working on an Agile team, and the best way to understand it is actually work on an Agile team as an Agile team member. So that's where the difference in having a 2-day training versus knowing what it means to be delivering in an Agile manner. The third aspect is the organizational awareness of the product owner role. So this is an aspect which often gets a lower priority or sometimes not even enough attention, and you would face challenges with this aspect if the Agile transformation in the organization or Agile implementation is more of a grassroots level effort and not a top-down approach, where the idea is let's start with a couple of teams and prove our success and then propagate from there. What happens in this situation is a team is trying to work in an Agile manner. The product owner has the right mindset, but outside of the team, everyone else is still in their traditional approach. They are still operating in, with their traditional expectations of having long-term goals, kind of locked and committed, and that any kind of deviation or variance needs to go through, the extensive change management process that basically is a roadblock to the Agile mindset. In such situation, if the product owner is working with external stakeholders who don't really fully understand how to interact with the product owner, what to expect from a product owner and an Agile team, it becomes difficult for the product owner to work effectively. So it's important to have a better understanding of Agile across the organization, even if your Agile implementation is a grassroots level. In one of our previous presentations of this webinar, we ran a survey with a larger audience, and I wanted to present the results so that we can kind of see it like how this particular factor is affecting the success and how much work is needed in order to improve. So we ran the survey of one question based on the various aspects of knowledge that we just discussed on a scale of 1 through 5. Where does your organization rank? And this was a broad audience from different organizations. It wasn't a one single program. So we wanted to see like what is the general, overall health of this knowledge aspect, right? And as you can see, what we got was more than 50% ranked it at 3, and average was 3.87. And if you notice, there were no 5s in this survey response. There were 1s, 2s, and what that tells us is that there is, a lot of work that needs to be done on at least one of the aspects, if not more, across the industry to improve the ability of a product owner to be successful. So knowing the challenges, what can we do, right? So let's look at each of these, and I'm not going to read through this. It's a content heavy slide, but I just want to touch on these so that we can discuss some ideas. Lack of agile knowledge, the most basic thing you can do is make sure every one of your product owners has gone through some form of formal training, whether it is one of the popular certifications or an agile boot camp, or focused agile training on their role within the organization. Now, in addition to that, just having a couple of days of training is not enough, like I discussed before. It's important for the product owner to get that continuous support on an ongoing basis. So ongoing learning can be through various, learning resources that organization can provide, or having an agile coach work with the product owner, at least in the initial part of when they assume that role. Because it was one thing to learn in a 2-day training, and it's completely another thing to actually implement what you learned in the real world. So that's where having an agile coach, supporting a product owner when they face challenges, and help them implement the agile mindset within themselves as well as on the team is important. Lack of business domain expertise. Now, the most obvious is make sure your product owners are the right ones that you identify within the organization, who have the domain knowledge already. But as the teams grow, the number of teams grow, and there is a need for more and more product owners, this is when organizations grow in size, or the agile implementation grows in size. It becomes sometimes unrealistic to pull people purely from the business side, and you might end up hiring product owners, so folks who have the ability to work in the product owner role but might not have the exact domain knowledge that you're looking for. In such cases, it is important for you to make sure that their learning curve, you shorten their learning curve as much as possible for a business, domain knowledge perspective. Create the learning resources that they can easily access, and they're not struggling to get the knowledge purely by themselves. And also an important factor is it's not just the knowledge, but also having really lived that life of a business user for them to actually get that actual ability to represent the business, is pairing the product owners with subject matter experts, or allocating some of their bandwidth into an actual business role where they are able to see things firsthand and experience them firsthand. Awareness in the organization, some of these are most obvious. Have the organization go through agile, basic agile training, but that doesn't, things don't stop there. The important part there is the leadership should support the teams that are going through agile transformation, and actually support them where they're facing challenges. The biggest thing there is to identify where the challenges are, and the way to do that is to listen to the team members. So if you have an agile team that is doing agile, working in an agile manner, in a context where there are other stakeholders who are not agile yet or still working in a traditional approach, work with that team and listen to the team members. Have maybe a focused retrospective on, what are the challenges they are facing in interacting externally, and that's where you will get those important pieces of information that will help you identify where there is work that you need to do as leadership to help the team work effectively. So those are basically some of the factors and some of the remediation or potential mitigation that we can do in the knowledge area. Now let's look at empathy. This might seem like one of the obvious and most common thing that should exist in the organization. But let's take a little bit of a more analytical look at it. Try to slice and dice it in such a way that we can figure out where those problems exist and what kind of remediation is possible. All right. So before we jump in, let's first understand what empathy is. Empathy is the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing from within their frame of reference. That is the ability to place yourself in someone else's shoes or someone else's position. There are different types of empathy: emotional empathy, logical, compassionate empathy, cognitive empathy. We're going to look at two specific types that are applicable in our context: cognitive and compassionate, and I'll explain what they are. So cognitive empathy is a more logical type of empathy, basically the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and see things from their perspective. It does not require engaging in their emotions, does not require that you must have sympathy for the other person, and that is called cognitive empathy. And then the compassionate empathy is more of a mix of cognitive and emotional. So let me explain. Emotional empathy is where you're basically able to see things from others' perspective and actually feel that emotion, that exact emotion that the other person is feeling, right? A compassionate empathy is a combination where you are able to understand what the other person is going through, feel that compassion, and then also have a desire to take an action to mitigate the situation or the problem. That is the important part, which makes it called compassionate empathy. So now that we have a general sense of what empathy, what areas of empathy we're going to talk about, let's jump into what are the various empathy dimensions that affect a product owner's success. So the three dimensions are product owner's empathy towards the team, product owner's empathy towards the user, and the third is organizational empathy. Let's do a deep dive into these. All right. So product owner's empathy towards team. I usually start with the most obvious one. You would want a product owner to be able to connect with the team at a human level. This might seem quite obvious, and that it probably exists in most cases, but there are situations where you might find basically a disconnect between the product owner and the team. Right? I have worked with teams where product owner didn't even physically visit the team members because there was some distance, a couple of buildings away. The months gone by, and the product owner has not actually physically visited the team and worked with them. So this kind of demonstrates how disconnected a product owner is from the team. Some product owners see agile teams as IT resources that are at their disposal to meet the business need and nothing more than that, right? So of the two types of empathy that we discussed, the compassionate empathy is really what is needed here, so that PO can compassionately participate in discussions, activities, ceremonies, and take actions that are not always convenient for them. Product owner is not just a communicator of a business need or just transferring information, but they are in a unique position where they're also supposed to help with the implementation and make sure that they are protecting the team from influences that could affect their ability to deliver value, right? And the value is not just business value. Value, it comes from all areas, including the technical side of things that a product owner might not be very comfortable or knowledgeable about. But if they have empathy, they'll be able to actively listen to the team, understand their challenges, and help making fair decisions. But if you have product owners who lack that empathy towards the team, then they'll primarily care about the factors that affect their own personal success that they are assessed on, and primarily focus on the business need. I've seen situations where teams basically have come to an understanding that the product owner will not be able to understand the technical challenges, and they try to handle those themselves without the help of the product owner. And sometimes that leads to working overtime or not accounting for the work that is not considered value from the business, from the product owner standpoint, but still doing that in order to make sure that things keep going, or that they are able to continue working without accruing a ton of technical debt. So that's just an example of where product owner, with a lack of empathy, could cause the product owner's own success and the agile team success to be at risk. Now, the next factor is product owner's empathy towards the user. So this is where this is a factor that could become prevalent in organizations that are bigger in size, and the product owner is too far away from organizationally too far away from the actual user. Product owner might be directly interacting with the business leadership and getting their priority and business need information from the business side, but not from the system user, right? So of the two types of empathy that we talked about, cognitive and compassionate, just having cognitive empathy will have a great impact in this situation. Product owners should not only be implementing the business need that has a return on investment, but also interacting with the business users to understand how is the product impacting their life, how is it getting used, what are the challenges in actual adoption. Sometimes product owners or organizations see challenges with user adoption, and it is very difficult to find out what is going on. We built this amazing product on the cutting edge technology with the best user experience, and the users are just not adopting it. What's going on? If a product owner is working directly with the users to understand their pain points, their day-to-day life, it becomes much easier to identify these challenges. Okay, and then the third type is the organizational empathy. And this might seem like, okay, you want just people to be nice. That's fine. But if you have organizational silos where there are departments that are supposed to fend for themselves rather than working towards a common mission and getting that kind of support, if you have an organization that is not forgiving of failures, it will create a lack of organizational empathy. I have worked in organizations where there are departments that have competing priorities, competing goals, that have different vendors that they are working with, and the vendors are competing with each other. That leads to a lot of lack in organizational empathy. So this will tremendously impact a product owner's success. And a product owner operates in a challenging environment where rapid change and the ability to adapt to changing situations is very important for the success of the team and the product owner. But if the product owner is not empowered enough or doesn't feel safe enough in order to interact with the stakeholders who are outside of their own team, and effectively make those decisions those pivots that are needed for a successful agile implementation, they won't be able to successfully deliver in an agile manner if the organizational empathy is not there. The key agile tenet of fail fast cannot be effectively implemented if the organization doesn't welcome the approach to celebrate success, but also empathize when failures occur. So looking at these three aspects, coming back to that survey that we ran it for this factor as well. And again, on a scale of 1 through 5, where does your organization rank? And as you can see the results, 3 is usually the most common answer. In this case, almost exactly 50%. Good part is there was no 1 there. So that's good to see that. But as you can see, there is a big portion of 2 and 3 that is showing that there is a significant lack of empathy, whether it's on the product owner side, whether it's on the for the users, or in general in the organization that exists in the industry. And it's important to address that. So looking at some of the potential options or mitigation strategies that can be implemented, the biggest hurdle in this aspect is to identify that is occurring, right? Recognizing the patterns that indicate whether a PO is engaged with the team, whether the team is getting the right kind of support and connection with from the product owner. Those are the things that are important. Once those are identified, once the problem is identified, you can implement some mitigation strategies. But some of the things that product owner can do is, basically connect with the team at a human level by having, team building activities and actively participating in them. Leadership, what they can do is they can hold product owner accountable for maintaining a sustainable velocity, in addition to the maximizing the business value, right? If product owner has that as a formal responsibility, that will automatically push them to connect with the team at a human level, right? Product owner's empathy towards user, like I mentioned, cognitive empathy can be a good, can make a big impact in this particular dimension. So empowering the organization by bringing education around human-centered design practices, personas, empathy mapping. These are some of popular practices these days that can help implement interactions that allow the product owner to empathize with the user. It doesn't even require an emotional empathy. Another aspect is Gemba walks. If you are able to get the team, the product owner to actually spend time with the users, live the life of the users. A day in the life of is one of those strategies. Your product owner can have a much better perspective on the user's challenges if they get that interaction. And then the empathy in the organization. This is where leadership usually has a tremendous impact. So, first of all, leading by example, and then also making sure that they are taking a holistic look at how the organization is structured. Are there departmental silos that are affecting this? Are there competing missions and goals or conflicting missions between organizations or departments that causes the lack of empathy, right? Recognizing those patterns at a macro level and addressing them, breaking down those walls. That's important from a leadership standpoint in order to foster organizational empathy. So we covered knowledge and empathy. Let's talk about the next factor, which is psychological safety. Now, at first glance, it might seem like this is quite intertwined with empathy, but there are some nuances to consider, and that's where we'll get into this. Excuse me, I'm taking a sip of water. All right, so just to draw some contrast between empathy and psychological safety. Empathy is an emotion that, emotion that you would feel towards another person, whereas psychological safety is an emotion about yourself, how you feel about yourself, right? There is the first contrast. Now let's take a deeper dive. It's psychological safety is basically the ability to show and employ oneself without fear of negative consequence, right? So it's an emotion about your own self. It's a shared belief, at a team level. If we want to explore what psychological safety is that it's a shared belief that the team is safe for interpersonal risk taking, and teams and members feel accepted and respected. And this is currently the most studied and analyzed, enabling condition in the group dynamic. So let's take a deeper dive. There's two factors or two dimensions in psychological safety. One is psychological safety for the team, and the other is psychological safety for the product owner. So let's take a deeper dive. Psychological safety for the team. Now, from this, aspect, let's look at it whether a product owner has created psychological safety, and also whether the organization or the leadership has created, right? So, is product owner collaborating effectively with the team on technical challenges and business priorities, right? When team faces those challenges, do they work with the product owner, or do they treat the product owner as an external entity that needs to be managed or handled, right? Um, while this is the cultural aspect, there's also processes that can affect psychological safety. It's not just about people's behavior and people's culture. There could be processes in the organization that can also have a significant impact on psychological safety. Just like the organizational silos that we talked about, if there is an existence of um, boundaries between teams and departments that causes them to have, you know, conflicting goals that could lead to a lack of psychological safety. And then psychological safety for the product owner. This is an important factor. So a product owner is in a unique situation where they have to maximize the business value, but also protect the team, right? In order to effectively do that, um, product owners have to usually have these inconvenient decisions that they have to make in terms of prioritizing, and that requires them to have interactions outside of the organization, outside of the team. Sometimes requires them to have conversations around change, which is always seen as an undesirable aspect, right? um, so if an organization has the most knowledgeable people covering all aspects of the knowledge and the most empathetic people and nice people, but if there are organizational processes that restrict effective change management, that restrict teams from making those pivots that are needed as an agile team, that will cause, anytime there is a situation where a product owner has to make a change, make a pivot, to be seen as an undesirable activity. And when something like that occurs, if a product owner has to interact with people and have inconvenient discussions, that will affect their psychological safety. So, what can we do here to make a product owner feel more psychologically safe? The organization has to demonstrate that they welcome this role, that they welcome the challenges that they are facing, and they are there to help them through those challenges, right? So that's where product owners' psychological safety is affected by the environment around them. So here's a quick look at the survey. Um, it shows a similar picture, right? We have the 3 as the most common answer on a scale of 1 to 5. How do you think your organization is doing about psychological safety? And the average here was 2.9696, which is actually quite less. So that demonstrates that there's a lot of work that is needed in the organization, in the industry, to bring psychological safety levels up throughout the organization. Now, what can be done? Potential areas of mitigation. For the team, the biggest hurdle, like I said, is identifying and recognizing the patterns. To make it safe for the teams, the product owner has to connect with the team on a human level, and then there could be also activities that can be done from a coaching standpoint, where running the right kind of sessions and workshops, coaching sessions to let make people aware of this aspect. Most of the times there are organizations that are not even considering psychological safety as one of the things, cultural aspect that they need to improve on. And another thing is making sure that the product owner is accountable for fostering psychological safety. So you basically make the product owner accountable and then enable them to be successful in that, responsibility. Psychological safety for the product owner. This is where leadership plays a key role in making sure that they are enabling the product owner in their challenging role, and ensuring that the interactions that occur, most of them will be, those inconvenient conversations that I talked about, are not going in such a way that they basically discourage the product owner from standing up for the team, right? So some of the things that can be done is having the right kind of coaching at leadership level, program level, where they understand how to set the right expectations, and also understand the conflicting expectations that we have from the product owner role, and help them balance those by providing the support and having um, a relationship that is not a relationship that product owner has to manage, but the product owner should see that as a collaborative interaction with the leadership. So we looked at various aspects. Let's do a quick recap of various factors that we looked at for a product owner's success. We looked at the knowledge aspect, psychological safety, and empathy. And we did a deep dive into each one of these. We looked at how they affect a product owner, how they affect a team, and what can be done in order to address some of those challenges. So that kind of concludes the presentation part. We can jump into the questions, but before that, Lauren, is there anything you want to say from a closing standpoint?
I just wanted to let everyone know that you can follow us on LinkedIn, and you can always visit our website as well for more information on our Agile services. We also post our class schedule up there with webinars, or right now any additional virtual trainings that we're doing. So feel free to take a look at that. And if you have any questions post-webinar, you will receive an email with my contact information. You're welcome any feedback. And that's pretty much it, Anup. So if you want to go ahead and start with some of the questions that we got throughout the webinar, go for it.
Sure. Thanks, Lauren. So we received some of the questions, so I'm going to try and address them. One is, what advice would you give a team that's experimenting with full team product ownership rather than having a single product owner in the traditional sense? All right. The term, so I'm going to talk a little bit about why the term product owner was used for this particular role. And comparing that to traditional world, right? Agile, when it was introduced 20 years ago, the traditional approach was you have an Agile team, you have an IT team, and IT team interacts with the business and basically gets their business needs, and they work with the subject matter experts, and they provide the requirements that are implemented. Usually those subject matter experts were not decision makers, right? In order to make sure that the team had a business representative working directly with them, collaborating with them, but they were not just information communicator or information transmission, person in the communication chain. The term product owner was coined to make sure that they had the ownership and the ability to make decisions. However, over time, this kind of gets misunderstood when you just look at the word or the term product owner. Outside of the Agile context, you might think it's a person who owns the product, and that sometimes ends up being a higher level person in the organization, sometimes a senior director or VP, who owns the entire product when the product size is large, right? So there is that misunderstanding about the word or the term. The optimal role and the person would be a person who can work directly with the team, is able to provide sufficient attention to the team, and is not just communicating high level business need and the vision, and then walking away, letting other people do the work of interacting with the team on a in a collaborative manner, but not have the ability to make decisions. So I would lean more towards having a product owner having a person who is sufficiently knowledgeable, and second thing, has been empowered to make decisions at least at the team level. There are some decisions that are higher level that have product wide impact. Those could be centralized and kept with higher level leadership. But the decisions at the team level should really remain with the product owner. And a team should get, ideally having a dedicated product owner would be great, but I know that that's not realistic in the industry. So a product owner who has at least a major portion of their bandwidth allocated to the team would be optimal. Another question is, should product owners live in the business or IT? So we face this question simply because the product owner is a unique role, right? If the product owner purely resided in IT, they will slowly start to lose connection with the business. They will not be able to see things from the business perspective, and most of their focus will be on looking at things from the IT perspective and delivering whatever the business is asking for. On the other hand, if the product owner is purely on the business side, you would see challenges such as lack of empathy and psychological safety for the team, product owner purely pushing for business value and not really understanding what it takes to, work in an agile manner and actually have a system that doesn't accrue too much technical debt. So the optimal situation will be a product owner whose maximum focus or bandwidth is allocated to being on the IT team, but at the same time, they are also allocating some of their bandwidth to being on the business side, actually doing work and actually interacting with the business users for a portion of their bandwidth. Additionally, they should also be working on the adoption side, right? When the product is actually released to the users, they should be working closely with the users to see how the adoption is going and where are the challenges in adopting the new product. Even if you have the most cutting edge technology and the most amazing user experience, there could be situations that are preventing users from adopting the system, and a product owner can only understand it if they have access and actual role on the business side. So I would say that they need to reside on both sides. Now, where does the PO belong in the organizational structure? Are they business or IT dependent? This is another question that we received, which is basically the question that we just discussed. Another question we have is there a way to measure these things? So they're currently, the measure the aspects and the dimensions and the factors that we just discussed. So there currently doesn't, I have not seen a formal way to measure. And we are actually, contemplating whether it would make sense, it would provide value in the industry to create such a measurement. And so that's where I would pose the question back to this community. And, in general, I have done in the previous one as well, that if there is sufficient desire, if you feel that it would add value to have some kind of a measurement tool, let us know, and then we'll focus our energies on that. And we'll create something that we can use to measure and quantitatively see, how an organization is faring on various dimensions. All right. So hopefully I addressed all the questions. If there are more, please feel free to send them over. And if you want to have a one-on-one conversation to discuss your specific context, you're definitely most welcome. Please reach out directly to me, reach out to Lauren, or you can go to our CCPACE website, and there's a number of ways to contact us. So do not hesitate. We're always welcome. Discussions with our clients to understand the problems that they're going through and figure out what would be the best solution in the client's interest. So you're definitely welcome to reach us um, for a frank discussion. Having said that, if there are no further questions, I think we can conclude this webinar, and I can give you 15 minutes back for your lunch. Lauren, if there's anything else that you would like to mention?
Nope, that sounds great. Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. Thanks, Anup.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.